presenting our panelists, I will just say a few words about the context of this event. So when the international coalition led by the United States and the Syrian Democratic Forces, or the SDF, defeated ISIS in 2019, they captured about 12,000 ISIS combatants, but they also at the same time took control over and became responsible for tens of thousands of people from their families, including thousands of children. So they are currently held in several camps in North East Syria, such as Al-Hol, and more than 700 male teenagers were sent from the camp to different detention centers, reportedly for security reasons. So among all the children, around 27,000 are foreigners, 20,000 are from Iraq, and the rest from a number of countries. So while some countries of origin have repatriated some of the most vulnerable of their children, others have not yet done so. So in addition to restrictions on seeing their families, obstacles to their development and access to education, poor health, hygiene, and security conditions, and exposure to radicalized individuals in the camps and in the detention centers, this situation violates the basic rights of the children and places them at risk of radicalization. Fight for Humanity, in collaboration with its local partner, is supporting more than 700 children in detention with basic recreational, social, and educational activities to provide hope and facilitate their future reintegration into society. So today with our speakers, we will look at the current situation of children in the camps and detention centers, the related legal challenges, as well as issues of return and reintegration, taking into consideration experiences of repatriation. So now I would like to present our speakers today. First, we have Dr. Abdul Karim Omar, Head of Foreign Affairs at the Autonomous Administration of North East Syria. Hello, can you maybe say a few words about yourself?
Hello. As my colleague has said, my name is Abdul Karim, and also I am heading the Foreign Affairs Office in the Autonomous Administration in North East Syria. I'm very happy to join you, and I hope that we will be able to contribute to this seminar. And I do agree with what you said. There are really harsh violations of children's rights, especially what we see today in terms of what is happening at the international level. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Then we have Cholpon Orozobekova, the director of the Bulan Institute for Peace Innovations. Welcome, Cholpon.
Hello, thank you for having me. And I'm a director of the Bulan Institute, which is a research institute based in Geneva, Switzerland. And I'm very delighted to be here. Thank you.
Then we have Dr. Annyssa Bellal, senior researcher at an international lawyer. So from January on, she will be also the executive coordinator of the Geneva Peace Building Platform and senior researcher at the Center on Conflicts, Development and Peace Building. Hello, Annyssa.
Hello, Nicolas. Thank you very much for this introduction. Hello, everyone. I'm very happy to be here. As Nicolas said, from January on, I'll be also working on peace building issues. And I do believe that this particular issue of the detention of children, but also of foreign fighters and Syrian fighters in northern Syria is a core aspect of peace building in the region.
Thank you. And then we have Mehmet Balci from Fight for Humanity, who is the founder and co-director of Fight for Humanity. So hello, Mehmet.
Hello, everybody. My name is Mehmet Balci. So I'm happy to be with you. Thank you very much for joining us. I hope we can share concrete information from the field and then share with you our concerns And the objective is to see how we can support each other, mobilize more international community in defense of the children. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. So thank you very much to all of you for being with us today, and thank you also to the audience for tuning in. So now let's start with our discussion. So in the first part of the panel discussion, we will talk about the current situation of these children and the related challenges. And then in the second part, we will move to reintegration and repatriation issues. So my first question today will be for Dr. Abdul Karim Omar. As the head of foreign affairs of the Autonomous Administration, you have worked intensively on these issues. You have also been on the front line, dealing with difficulties, challenges, and also with the critics from human rights organizations. This is a great opportunity today for all of us to address these issues in order to contribute to the improvement of the situation. So maybe to provide us some context about the situation, can you tell us more about where do these children come from and why some of them are also detained in separate centers? And then the second question, also, what are your efforts and the efforts of other actors to improve the conditions of these children in the camps and also the ones that are in detention centers? Dr. Abdullah, over to you.
شكرا. كما ذكرتم في تقريركم بشهر آذار 2019 أعلنت قوات سوريا الديمقراطية هزيمة داعش، لكن الحقيقة الانتصار كان جغرافيا وعسكريا، لكننا لم نقضي على داعش ولم نقضي على الإرهاب. وبعد 3 سنوات من التحرير هناك ما زال
There's no interpretation.
There's an issue with the interpretation.
It's true. Can you hear me?
Yeah. Okay. Do you know what's the problem?
هل أعيد من البداية؟
Shall I repeat from the beginning?
Yes, please. Can we start again?
كما ذكرتم
As you have said, in 2019, in March, the SDF has defeated ISIS. But as a matter of fact, this victory was only on the state, was only military and geographically speaking. So it was a victory, yes, but ISIS is still here through different dormant cells that are conducting still terrorist operations. And ISIS is still there also through the ideology that it has spread in the areas that have stayed under ISIS occupation for years. And ISIS is still here through thousands of foreign fighters and fighters of ISIS, and also 10,000 of their families that are in the Roj and the El Hol camps. This is a huge responsibility, and the numbers are really huge. So as an autonomous administration, we cannot face all those issues on our own. Regarding also, for instance, trying and prosecuting those fighters, doing that, and also prosecuting women that have committed as well crimes, and also dealing with the families in the camps. We cannot deal with all of that. We have made some calls and contacts with the international community. We have contacted our European colleagues, and also some of them came to visit the autonomous administration. And during all those calls and visits and contacts, we have called upon the international community to uphold their responsibilities, but still nothing. The international community hasn't done anything. We cannot throw the ball on the autonomous administration. We don't know when this time bomb will explode, because it is a time bomb, and when it will explode, it will really be disastrous for us and for the international community. Now, regarding your question about women and children in particular, regarding children, we still have 7,000 children from 55 countries that are today in Al Hol and Roj camps. And we also have provisional places of detention where some of those children are. This is beside Syrians and Iraqis. Last June, we have organized a joint meeting with 50 personalities, representatives of foreign affairs of most European countries. And also in this joint meeting, we had also some European institutions and the US Foreign Department, State Department, and the Canadian Foreign Department. And we have called on everyone to uphold their responsibility regarding the fate of those women and those children specifically. And we ask all countries to repatriate their own citizens, their own nationals. And we also asked Mehmet to provide the autonomous administration with some kind of support to help improve the situation of those women and children in the camps. So we asked them to help us improve their material and financial and humanitarian situation, as well as the security one. But as a matter of fact, most European countries, and unfortunately, have refused to repatriate their nationals, including children, under the pretext that they represent a major threat to their societies, which is totally wrong. And I repeat it. The first reason is that those children are victims. We have to support them. We cannot put on them all the blame for what their fathers have done. Second, keeping those children in a radicalized environment and in non-humanitarian environments will lead to a new generation of terrorists. And these new terrorists will be even more dangerous than the current ISIS fighters, because those children will be rearing in the spirit of revenge, of violence, of crimes, and they will carry with them this spirit of retaliation and this desire for retaliation. This is why we are asking once again the international community to uphold their responsibilities and repatriate their nationals. Now, regarding your question about the situation of some children that are in provisional places of detention, and as you said, of course, in those detention centers, their rights are being violated, but we are obliged, we are compelled to do that, because those children, when they are in camps and with the age category of 12 years and beyond that, they have reared and were brought up in an environment of terrorism and radicalization. So we cannot keep them as they are, because we have killings that are being conducted every day in Al Hol camp. In Al Hol camp, there were also some women who have married some of those children so that they carry out their own children and increase the number of ISIS followers. So we were obliged to take them out of these camps to put them in provisional centers of detention to prevent all this. On the other hand, we have a rehabilitation center that we have opened, and it hosts currently 120 children. So we call upon the international community to build 15 to 16 similar centers, and then we will be able to take those children from unhealthy situations, whether in provisional places of detention or from the camps, and we will move them to those rehabilitation centers until the countries of origin will take back their own nationals. They have to repatriate them and get them back and integrate them in their societies. And this is the only means and way to prevent having a new generation of terrorists. We cannot keep children and women in the areas of the autonomous administration, because if you do that, it doesn't mean that they will not represent a threat to us and to the international community. So I think that we need a radical solution, and the international community has to come up with solutions and repatriate their women and their children. And thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And thank you for sharing, this detailed situation of the children, and also the challenges and the difficulties that you are faced with. Regarding those children, I think there are actions that we can do to improve their situation. So actually, Fight for Humanity is currently supporting local partners who are conducting basic support activities to those more than 700 children that are in detention. So my next question will be for Fight for Humanity Director Mehmet Balci. Could you tell our audience maybe more about the current situation of these children in the detention centers in particular?
Thank you very much. Indeed, Fight for Humanity has been involved in this issue directly and indirectly since 2019, when Fight for Humanity somehow facilitated informally and also later on as implemented partner for the action plan signed between SDF and United Nations. Within this framework, we are supporting the implementation of the action plan signed between the SDF and United Nations. So one of the aspects of this in this partnership we have is also to watch the situation of the children in detention and also to advocate for the respect of the rights of the children. In this framework, we have led different visits in the different detention centers in order to assess, together with other NGOs, the needs of the children in detentions, humanitarian needs of the children. So we are talking about 800 children in 3 different detention facilities. And these children are, as the Dr. Abdul Karim said, are from 12 years, between 12 and 17 years old. And these are, of course, not even Dr. Abdul Karim called it temporary facilities, but somehow they are detained and they are, so we
كانت مؤقتة أم لا إنها
our condition at the beginning was very bad. I think now their condition are a bit improved thanks to the support provided by different actors. So in this sense, Fight for Humanity. So we are talking about 700 children. Some of have health issues, some of have disability issues, some of them has also a lot of humanitarian needs. So currently they are indeed SDF authorized or give the access to several local and international organizations to come up to support children in this context. Of course, it's very delicate. It's very sensitive issues. There are many legal issues there as well. How much is really the detention is justified? We know that they are detained reportedly for security reasons. We know the situation in the camps is very dangerous. Only this year, 120 people were killed in the camps themselves, where the children used to be. So there are many security incidents happening. We are very aware, very much aware of the situation, the security. But still, this is the last really resort to keep the children in these detention facilities is open questions. Okay, but within this framework, we are still trying to improve the situation. So one side we are leading the visits to assess the needs. Another hand, we are also supporting directly children with the support of a German foundation called Medico International. We have developed as together with our local partners and kind of a program how to support the children from PSS, psychosocial support, from the even PSS, mental health, psychosocial support, with the recreational activities, including with the, and we are also developing and basic informal educational activities, which is also very much needed. We see that as there is an initiative called by UN, Education Cannot Wait. We think also the education cannot wait, neither in these conditions, wherever the children is, they have the right to the education. They have the right to have, so we as Fight for Humanity, we are responding to this, trying to respond to these huge needs of 700 children in 2 detention facilities. So we hope really that we can do better during over the next month. So therefore, our call is also to all the international community. I will come back to this, but this is an unsustainable, is not really ideal situation, is not really where the children should be, and the support provided is very limited. These children needs more space, more rehabilitation, or we don't call it rehabilitation. These children need support and to be returned to their natural environment where they should be. So we are. This is what we are trying to do. I will be very happy to take questions later.
Okay. Well, thank you for these precisions on the situation of the children. And indeed, I think we have to do something and act, right? Really, if we don't want to build another generation of radicalized individuals, I think it's essential to already act as soon as possible. And from now, with this first project that Fight for Humanity is implementing, we hope this will open the path to more activities. So now I would like to go more on the legal side of the issue and see and address my next question to Annyssa Bellal. So Annyssa, you've been observing and researching on the humanitarian policies and legal obligations of non-state armed actors globally. And you also follow very closely the situation in North East Syria, including the legal situation of ISIS detainees and their families. So you notably conducted recently a field research in North East Syria, where you were studying the SDF, so the Sion Democratic Forces and the Autonomous Administration humanitarian policies. So Annyssa, according to what you observed and your analysis, what are the legal obligations of the SDF and the self-administration in this situation?
Thank you very much, Nicolas, for this great question. It is a complex situation, legally speaking, of course, but it's also quite clear. The fact that in Northeast Syria, there is the application both of what we call the law of armed conflict, international humanitarian law, and also arguably, and I would tend to be in agreement with this statement, that non-state actors such as the autonomous administration in Northeast Syria, which can be considered as a de facto authority, also have human rights law obligations. Of course, the degree of which they can actually respect this human rights obligation can be discussed, but I'll come back to this in 1 minute. So first, if we look at the international humanitarian law, the law of armed conflict situation, it's clearly applicable in this context. Here you have both sets of norms that can be relevant. First of all, the norms on treatment. And it is clear that all persons that are being detained have the need to be treated humanely and cannot face inhuman or degrading treatment while in detention. This obligation has been interpreted quite broadly. It's not just torture, it can also be inhuman conditions of living. And also the fact of being detained indefinitely can be considered as a form of torture, of psychological torture, if you want. Then, and this is clear under IHL, which is applicable to all parties to the armed conflict involved in this region, including the SDF and the autonomous administration. And then you have the second layer of obligations, which is human rights law. And here you have obviously also the same kind of obligations that need to be respected in terms of treatment of not only of the children. Obviously, the children are a priority because, as Dr. Omar has said, children are in any case need to be considered as victims, and this is clear under also the convention, the rights of the child. But even all the fighters in detention, all the former terrorist fighters, if you want, including the women, have to be protected against against inhuman treatment. And when it comes to detention, it is quite complicated under the law of armed conflict and also under human rights law. But one can, I don't want here to give a lecture at all about this obligation, but we could at least focus on one important aspect. Once in detention, every human being cannot be held indefinitely and has the right, so to speak, to know when it's going to be released or why this person is in detention. So we all as human beings have a right of the security of our persons, and we cannot be detained arbitrarily. So we may be detained for security reasons, but at some point this needs to be determined. And one needs to know when or how we can be released. So I would say that these are also clear obligations pending upon the autonomous administration and the SDF. That being said, again, the autonomous administration and the SDF are not only party to an armed conflict, but they are also have to be considered as a non-state actor. And as a non-state actor, it would be unfair and it would be very paradoxical to consider that they have exactly the same capacity to uphold these obligations than states. And in fact, states, and I would argue that states cannot have it both ways. On the one hand, to say, oh, you are a non-state actor, and as a non-state actor, you cannot have human rights obligations at the international level. But yes, you are non-state actors, you are detaining people, and at the same time, you will have the same responsibility as states. So no, I would argue that in fact, states have greater obligations and responsibilities, but I think we will come back to the obligations of states later.
Yeah, actually talking about states, my next question for you was, what are actually the legal obligations of the states of origin of the children, in case, especially in the case of foreign children?
Yes, so here also it's a bit complicated, but the European Court of Human Rights on many occasions have reaffirmed that at least for those parties to the European Convention of Human Rights, but I think it can be argued the same for international treaties, that states have obligations to ensure the respect of core human rights obligations, such as the prohibition of torture, even if the person are detained extraterritorially. So that would mean that we could argue, and I know for a fact that legal suits are, coming to those states who are refusing to repatriate their own nationals, being children or not children, for violations of their own human rights obligations. And because here we are not talking about, superficial human rights, if that even exists. We are really talking about core human rights. So the core human rights here are inhuman and degrading treatment, and also the rights to a fair trial and the right not to be held in indefinite detention. So, so habeas corpus rights, fair trial rights. So these are rights that can be that arguably can be, let's say, how can I put this? That there is a clear obligations pending on those states, and there will be probably legal suits against these states that are refusing to repatriate their own nationals in this context.
Okay, thank you. I think this is very, very clear, and also it gives another perspective to that issue. So now I would like to continue with Cholpon. So Cholpon, you are the director of the Bulan Institute, and you've been very active on this specific issue. You have been following the situation of ISIS members' wives and children in the camps, in particular those who have been repatriated. So you have just finalized a research on the successes and challenges of the states and communities that have been welcoming back ISIS returnees, including their families, notably the experience of Central Asian governments. So actually you have like a very, you are aware of the very concrete experience of reintegration or repatriation of ISIS members and the families. So what is the position of the Bulan Institute on these issues, first of all?
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you for the invitation. So since 2019, our institute has been researching state policies toward women and children with links to ISIS. And we published several very important publications and analyzed options such as stripping citizenship, establishing a Cholpon tribunal, or transferring male fighters to Iraqi prisons. So our finding of the research has shown that only low compliant solution is repatriation of children and their mothers. So here we are not going to talk about male fighters, we are speaking about children and their mothers. So other options don't work as they have many shortages. So for example, you know that some EU states, especially France, wanted to transfer male fighters to Iraqi prisons. And we know that there are many deficiencies in the judicial system of Iraq, so it doesn't work. And also, for example, establishing a Cholpon tribunal also was discussed by Sweden and other 10 EU countries. And this option also doesn't work because there are so many challenges, financial challenges, legal challenges, and moral ones. So stripping citizenship also does not resolve a problem at all. And this option leaves a state without any responsibility for their citizens. And these people who are detained in North Syria, they can be freed one day, for example, let's imagine, and they can commit terrorist attacks in any corner of the world. So now, in our opinion, is only repatriation and rehabilitation is a low compliant solution at the moment, especially for children and their mothers. And regarding the current situation in Al-Hol and Rosh, the main reason why we need to worry is that there are thousands of children in these camps. So international organizations, they estimate that there are about 43,000 at the moment, and approximately 77% of them under the age of 12 and 33% of them under the age of 5. So we are dealing here, the majority are children. So, regarding the state obligations toward these children, first of all, children should be treated first and foremost as victims, and countries should act at the best interests of the children. Second, states have shared the responsibility for international peace. A state's jurisdiction under human rights law is primarily territorial, but a state may also have jurisdiction in respect of acts which are performed or which produce effects outside its national borders. Every state is responsible. This is very important. Every state is responsible for the acts of their citizens. If that citizen can be harmful or can perpetrate violations or on another state's territory, so the state should take responsibility for that citizen. In this case, UN member states have primary responsibility for their own nationals. Third one, under international law, states should protect their citizens' right to life and ensure their right to nationality. In the current situation with ISIS-linked children and women, states should act against ill treatment or against living conditions which endanger their physical and mental health. So, for example, countries give many arguments to postpone repatriation, but the experiences of other countries, especially, as you said, Central Asian countries, have shown that repatriation is possible and it can be very successful. And for example, 4 countries in Central Asia, they repatriated children and women. And I would like to say that the rehabilitation process is going very well. Why? So especially regarding the children, we have been observing the process for 2 years now. And for example, Kazakhstan repatriated 722 people, including women, men also, but 70% of them are children. Especially rehabilitation of children are really successful. And Uzbekistan repatriated 435 women and children, also 70% of them are children. And Tajikistan, Kyrgyzstan repatriated only children from Iraqi prisons. And what I can say now, so almost 2 years passed since the repatriation started. So children changed a lot. And rehabilitation of children is quite successful. First of all, schooling of children was successful. Majority of children, they go to school now, and most of them, they integrated well and receive good marks. And do I have time still, or?
Yeah, please, if you have one more minute, then we will.
Okay, and then the adaptation process to school was very gradual and thorough prepared process. And there are rehabilitation centers, shelters across the countries, and medical and psychological support for these children in place. And I think one important actor in rehabilitation process is their family members, especially grandparents. And regarding the health issues, some children received urgent medical assistance, and some of them were wounded, malnourished, and sick. So they, in the health side, children are well now. All of them treated and received medical assistance. And of course, there is the issue about guardianship, especially in Tajikistan, because Tajikistan repatriated from Iraqi prisons about 80 children. But the thing is, Tajikistan didn't prepare the family members to adopt them, and they just, very quickly repatriated. But Tajikistan is having the problem with guardianship. But Kyrgyzstan's case was very successful. 80 children, all of them adopted, and they are now in families and they are going to school. So I think I will stop here, and if you have questions, I will answer later. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Cholpon. I think this is great, because also it gives hope that this is possible. Reintegration is possible. The rehabilitation is possible for all these children, and we can avoid the situation where after many years in detention or in the camps they are radicalized. So now I will move to the second part of our discussion today, and go back to Dr. Abdul, Karim, Omar. So we heard Cholpon talking about repatriation and reintegration efforts. So what are the efforts of your administration in order for these children to be repatriated by their country of origin? How many of them have been already repatriated, if you have that information? And who are those children? Thank you.
شكرا.
Thank you. When we declared that we had defeated Daesh, we had thousands of these children in the camps. But in all truthfulness, all the interviews that were carried out and all the declarations and statements that we issued until this very date, I believe that what we have returned about 800 children from 25 countries. But as you know, there are Syrians have to leave with guarantees from the heads of tribes so that they can go back to Deir ez-Zor and Raqqa and other places that were in previous times under the control of ISIS. And so those who had not committed any crimes were returned to their families, and we returned about 200 members, meaning children, women, to their families in Iraq. But most of them were children. Unfortunately, what we have returned in in comparison with the total numbers of children in the camps is so low because the international community has not responded to our calls, and it was the response of the international community was not at the level required and expected, because we have to remove these children from the temporary detention centers, and as we said, we have to build about 15 to 16 centers like the Nouri Center. There's one in Kamishli and one in Hasaka, and we are in the process of establishing these rehabilitation centers. And we have an experience which is a successful one, and therefore we need support. We need support from the international community and from organizations, and we hope that through this symposium, maybe one of the results is to call upon the international community to cooperate with us in order to find a radical and final solutions to remove these children from these camps and send them back to their countries of origin. But in the meantime, we have to build these centers, and even by building these centers, there are so many problems to deal with, and therefore we have called on more than one occasion that there be an international conference to be held and to look into finding solutions to this crisis. But there are many children whose nationalities are not known. Some women have 5 children. Each child is from a father, and each father is from a different country. Some children have their fathers were killed and and they do not have any documents, any proof of who they belong to. And as Mrs. Bellal has said, the situation is so complex that it is beyond the capacity of the autonomous administration to deal with, and we are unable to send anyone, and we have to work with the international community. And when we liberated Roj, we wanted an international court or tribunal to be established, or special courts or special tribunals in cooperation with those countries, because how do we try people without coordination with their countries of origin? And once we send them, where do we send them? So we alone, as an autonomous administration, cannot bear the responsibility of such a huge and complex problem. And although they might constitute a threat for the international community, we have to coordinate with the countries of origin. This is an international problem. It has to be dealt internationally through coordination with the international community, especially with regard to those children. And I emphasize once again that they are victims. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you very much for highlighting all the challenges that you are facing. This is true that this is a lot for your administration. At the same time, I will ask my next question to Annyssa. So now we have, I mean, as we were saying before, 60,000 people were moved to Al-Hol camp from the areas close to the battlefields 2 years ago, after the joint operation by the SDF and the international coalition. So what are actually the legal obligations of the members of this international coalition, Annyssa?
The members with regard to what, the children, or I'm not sure actually.
Yeah, to the families of
the families.
Yeah, children and wives and all the families. Because we were talking about the responsibilities of the autonomous administration, but actually, as the international coalition was also part of this conflict. I mean, what
yes,
are they
as party to the conflict, Well, party to the conflict. Well, they have obligations in the sense that, first of all, well, there is a need to ensure that the civilian population, including those perhaps that have laid down their arms and that are in detention, has a sufficient way of, you know, adequate standard of living, but also when one focuses, I'm not sure it would be only the obligations of the members of the international coalition. This is why I was a bit confused. One thing is sure is that children that are being detained have core obligations that can be claimed broadly and not only to the autonomous administration. And the first natural, let's say, authority to which they could claim their right is the state of nationality. Why? Because there is a direct, let's say, legal right and link, jurisdictional link, we could say. And so, but also what is important is that with regard to highlight, with regard to children, is that the international community itself, such as the UN Security Council, has highlighted on different occasions the importance of the right of children, not only, for example, for the 6 core, you know, violations against children, which have put in place a good system within the UN Security Council, but also very recently, and you might, you know, you might know about this, that the UN Security Council has adopted a very important resolution in October 2021 about the protection of education in armed conflict, in which it really reiterated members of the international community to uphold, for example, the right of education of children in armed conflict. And as Mehmet Balci has said, education cannot wait. Why? Because education is really at the core of the prevention of future violence and is also one of the ways to prevent violent extremisms and so on and so forth. So I think that at some point, the international community at large, not only those states being part of the international coalition, but also other states, have the obligation to at least respect and ensure respect of certain norms under the law of armed conflict, but also under human rights law. And a last thing that I would like to say is that these norms arguably are part of what we called peremptory norms of international law that have, and I don't want to be too technical, but legally speaking, we say that they are erga omnes. It means that they can be, that the respect of these norms can be claimed by every state. Every state has an interest for these norms to be respected because it is so essential for us as a community of, you know, the community of states to ensure that they are respected by everyone. And as Dr. Omar has said, I mean, it is beyond the capacity of a non-state actor, even if it has the possibility to ensure, you know, a certain number of these rights, it is beyond its capacity to uphold all these rights. So the primary responsibility falls on the states. And it's up to the states really to ensure that human rights are respected, including children's rights, but not only. And here I want also to make sure that you know, we obviously the rights of children are paramount, but I would make also, I think it's important also to consider that including it's important also to take into account the rights of the former ISIS members and the women being held in detention, because them too, you know, have human rights and are also protected under human rights law. So it's not that we need to separate everything, because it is important to focus on children because they are victims, absolutely. But it's also important to take into account the broader picture and also to take care of the problem of those people in detention, because them too, at the end of the day, can create a problem if we don't take care of this. And just a last thing, I was very happy to hear about the practice that has been done in Central Asia. And So it is possible to actually repatriate these children and to take care of them and to educate them and to rehabilitate them and to give them a normal life. I mean, if we can speak about a normal life after the trauma they have lived through, but still this is possible to do. And I think it would be great if we could have an international conference to speak about legal issues, but also to speak about good humanitarian practices, such as the one that was highlighted by Cholpon.
Thank you. Okay, actually, that was a perfect transition to my next question. Cholpon, you know, you were saying, and as Annyssa just said, the repatriation can be a success, right? Even in those difficult conditions. But actually, what are the challenges for the states when repatriating women and children? Because I guess, you know, even if it's successful, they must have been faced with some challenges, right?
Mm-hmm. Thank you. So last 2 years, I have been researching this issue, and my book on this issue will be published by Hamilton Books in 2022. And I personally interviewed many government officials and diplomats, and what they say, many of them refer to the absence of consulate services in North Syria. They have this argument, and they say that since there is no official consulate, no access to the region, so we cannot organize repatriation. This is kind of first argument they give. But we know that United States is helping states to organize logistics and resolve all obstacles for repatriation. And as we can see today, also SDF is also ready to work with countries and to help them for repatriation. So, and also second concern that countries have, many states say that they will pose a security threat. And as you know, European countries, they experience terrorist attacks and many times, and they don't want to take this kind of risk. And they also refer to the public opinion. For example, in Europe, UK, France organized, they held this public poll to ask people if we can repatriate. And then, of course, the public opinion was against. And many EU countries, they refer to the public opinion saying that, look, people are against and we cannot do this, you know, if people are against. And also there are concerns about bringing to justice, because countries, they say that we don't have evidences about committed crimes in the Middle East and how we are going to charge. And this is also one argument. And the last argument is really, it's about building comprehensive rehabilitation programs. Really, it's a really very, very difficult process. But when I say about children in Central Asia, we can also talk about challenges. They are having very many challenges. And of course, they are trying to deal, but still it's very difficult process. But what I can say,
like the fears of the countries who are reluctant to take back their citizens are really justified? Because you said like they have these arguments, but
no, I wanted to conclude that it's not justified at all, because many of them, some of them, yes, I understand that this is serious concerns, but regarding the, for example, consulate, as I said, there is access to the region. Here, the SDF who wants to help countries, and United States who helps with all these obstacles, logistics. And regarding the public opinion, I think in Central Asia, public opinion also was against. But, you know, Central Asian countries like Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, they created narratives, and they really built good media strategy to convey these messages to the public, to change, to minimize the stigmatization, you know. So that's why I think that if the government decides to work on this and start conveying messages, you know, strategy is very important. So I think public opinion can change, you know. And the last one about rehabilitation, yes, it is very difficult to build comprehensive programs, but states should learn from each other. For example, Central Asia countries, they never had this kind of experience dealing with post-conflict trauma, for example. but they are learning while they are doing this, you know. So this kind of existing experiences can be a model to study, and there should be interstate learning, you know, sharing, exchange of information. And I know that, for example, Kazakhstan received so many delegations from international organizations, from the United States. So the process has started. But I think the main, my message is to states, start learning from each other. And it's possible.
No, but that's, I think, very encouraging to see that, you know, some states, when they have the willingness, they can really do this reintegration with success, no? Even if, of course, as you mentioned, there are challenges. So my last question will be for Mehmet Balci. So after that, we will move to a short Q&A session. So please, you can already send your questions through the Q&A box. So Mehmet, when we see, you know, all these interventions, everybody keeps saying that, you know, we have to act to avoid making the situation work, and that also that it is possible, and you know, there is hope that it is possible to reintegrate those children even if they have been exposed to this radical environment. What are the risks? What do you see as what do you see the risks as if we don't act in this kind of complex situation? What are the main risks according to you?
Thank you. I think many things has been said as a risk of non-action or not on due time action. Indeed, if we look at the environment, so we see that Al-Hol camp, other Rosh camp, other camps, 70,000 people together, but those who are in prison are living in, you know, in the camps where there are minimal services. And then also the population surrounding these camps also are very affected by the conflict. I mean, you have also 1 million basically displaced people. 500,000 of them are due to the Turkish occupation in Afrin or in Serikania and Tel Aviv. And then this is altogether the other former IDPs coming from other region from so it's already 1 million IDPs are living in this area. So with very limited resources. I have been there, everyone know, since 2013, minimum 30 times. I go there every, 4 or 5 times a year, and we are interacting with direct experience about that we are facing. So I think that inaction is also putting in danger the existing structures, existing coexistence in this hosting, let's say, communities, because people now think that everything is going to the ISIS members. Everybody's only care while we have other 300,000 displaced there, other 500,000 displaced there. Nobody is dealing with the other problems, and we know with all this Caesar Act, we know all these oil prices, all these crises that South administration is facing. The community is not able to sustain its own communities. This is has a great risk to create a problem with the social cohesion. Already very fragile. I think this is very important for to be taken into the consideration. Second, of course, put yourself, you are a parent, your children is separate from them, and then it's put in jail. So you are in the camp, you don't know where your children. Of course, you will be the best candidate, best recruiter for ISIS. Even these people, especially the mother of these children, will be the most radicalized. You will try to support ISIS. So this is the ticking bomb, I will say, this the mother of these children. And then beside that other mothers or situation that Dr. Abdul Karim said, this is our perfect school for ISIS to re-educate, to reorganize, to mobilize international community. They are now victim. ISIS, imagine yourself that ISIS is listening to us. Now they will, or if you don't respect your own rights, your own standards, your own laws, you say, then of course, ISIS will do the propaganda they are doing. These are blah, blah, blah. They say democracy, they say human rights. They say, you see how they are treating our children. I mean, these violations are the best gift given to ISIS. Not the states are somehow given all this opportunity to ISIS to reorganize themselves, to justify their action, and to say that, this human rights issues, this protection of civilians. Even so, we know that hundreds of people are working in the camps. We know self-administration, hundreds of people are working around this issue to support these families. But we know that we are talking about 60,000 people in a very fragile situation. I think this is, therefore, I think it's very important to think from also security and peace and security issues.
And on that matter, are there any lessons to be drawn from maybe other so-called counterterrorism operations? Because we're talking about North East Syria and ISIS, but maybe, in other contexts we can learn.
I think to be a little bit more, I would say, honest, I say that even within the states, there is no cohesion. So you have the counter-terror units dealing with this situation, and you have legal and policy level, which is, they are not always on the same page. Okay, they are treating mostly this within the counter-terror, even the rehabilitation, they call it, we don't call it this rehabilitation, or these are children are victims, they need to be returned, they need support, they need, okay, rehabilitation, some of to go back, and but I think that this is really, for me, the lesson learned is, in this case, I don't see the cohesion, and that there is no, even at European level, as Cholpon said, there was discussion in 2019 how to deal with the situation. So there was no, they didn't come up really with an legal policy, let's say, how can I say, coherent policy to deal with these issues. I think this, for my, to be honest, the lesson learned is that we failed. So therefore, from the failure, we should learn. What has failed? What can be learned after 3 years? We have to look into the lesson learned. So ISIS is again is active, is organizing, is smuggling people. They are recruiting, and they are using all this treatment as their main argument to survive and to reorganize outside the camps, not on inside the camps. So I think therefore the lesson learned are not so many positively, but lesson learned are a lot from the failure, but we can also learn a lot from the failures. I think we should really study the consequence of this failure and then face it. Again, it's not too late, never late, never too late, but we have still time to deal with these issues with repatriation, or to reduce the number, or if we need to take these people to the trial, and then if they are accused of something, they should be accused. And then, so all this are the failures, but still it's not too late. I think it's still, now maybe it's good time to start with these processes and to comply with our own human rights obligations, or that we are defending. So, I'm not a lawyer, but I will stop there. But I think I see more from practical and the point of view, and the situation in the field is telling a lot to us. So maybe we are dealing with Afghanistan, we're dealing with other, every day there are new conflicts. Maybe this issue is a little bit forgotten, but when you go to the area, it's not forgotten. It's really, really present, and then it's an urgent situation.
Okay, well, thank you for these words. I think we all understood the need that we have to act, and also the responsibility of the international communities in this. Now we'll move to the Q&A session. So we received already quite a few questions. So I apologize in advance if we cannot take all of them, because we're running a little bit out of time. But I would like to ask one question to Dr. Abdul Karim Omar. So I'm just reading the question. So thank you for your and the administration's efforts. So for years now, since the repatriation of 7 orphans to Sweden, we advocated for the governments to repatriate their citizens. What else can we do as civil society organizations in terms of advocacy to support this issue? And also, what will happen to the children's fathers in the prisons? Difficult question, but I think over to you.
Before answering this question, I would like to come back to the topic that the international community and Europe specifically are against the return of their citizens because they constitute a threat to their basic communities. And I emphasize once again that if they remain in this region, in these radicalized circumstances, does not mean they do not constitute a threat to the basic communities of these countries. Amongst the other justifications presented by certain countries is that for not bearing their responsibilities are just justifications in order not to deal with their responsibility. We have to deal with all the logistics, but if these people can reach Kabul, we will assume our responsibility of transporting them, the logistics, the security measures, everything we will be responsible for until we get them to a certain point. There are some countries that have military forces, they have security forces, they know the region very well, the security situation, and yet when we talk about them bearing their responsibilities, they hide behind justifications and they say we don't have any consulate or representative. These are just justifications in order not to bear their responsibility. We are ready to do whatever is possible logistically. They don't even have to support us. We can facilitate things, carry out everything. As for your question on the civil society, I think the civil society and the public opinion, the human rights organizations, the media, everyone has to put pressure on countries so that they bear their responsibilities, because the only solution is that each country comes and takes its citizens. As for the organizations, such as this organization, there is a transitional period until we can find a final solution, and there has to be some support to the autonomous administration in order to support these children and to remove them from these radicalized circumstances. And those who come to the region, they say we have heard from the Red Cross and from UNICEF. They can all come and visit these temporary detention places. They can visit the camps. We are very open. We are asking and calling upon the international community to provide us with support in order to improve the situation of the children. As for the fathers, I didn't quite understand your question. You mean the fathers of the children who are in the camps or in the detention centers? That is another topic, as we have already previously stated. Even the presence of those fighters in such circumstances without allowing them to go to trial is a problem. But what can we do? We do not have any solution. We, the autonomous administration, cannot carry out trials without coordination with the concerned country. So that is a problem for us. That is why I asked from the beginning that there be a conference, an international conference to be held under the auspices of the United Nations in order to face this crisis. This is an international crisis. It is not the responsibility only of the autonomous administration. It is a complex situation, and we have limited resources, and we are trying in every way to do whatever we can. And as our colleague has said, we are under embargo. The only way to obtain humanitarian assistance was through the Yakubiya checkpoint. It was closed down, and all the assistance we got through Damascus. Damascus does not allow for international assistance to reach us because of the economic crisis, because of the unemployment. And as you have said, this is an opportunity for ISIS to reorganize itself once again, and everything is linked to everything else. And in all truthfulness, we need your support, the support of the international community, everything you have mentioned, legally or other. We are doing more than that. We are against any violations of children's or abuse of children's rights. And They are deprived of all support, psychological, material support, and even those children require and need support. Unfortunately, we have children in a place and we are under embargo, so the international community is not carrying out its responsibility as it should. And therefore, there's been an occupation of certain regions. There are hundreds of camps for the displaced, and international organizations are not allowed to enter these camps, and where you have a lot of children, many children who were deprived of education because they were displaced from the place where they were, that were places that were occupied by Turkey, for example. Thank you.
Thank you so much for this very detailed response to the question. So I will try to take 2 more questions. So if you can keep your answers quite short because we're running a little bit late. So there is a question about to Cholpon. Do you have any information in how much investment is done on psychosocial rehabilitation of these children and their young mothers in Central Asia?
Thank you for the question. So regarding, for example, in Kazakhstan, there are 17 shelters, rehabilitation centers created across the country in different regions. And so these women and children, they were relocated to their hometowns, and these 17 shelters, they are helping them to reintegrate. And Uzbekistan's model is family-based. They don't have shelters, so they rely on family ties, family members. But still, in Uzbekistan, also there is constant psychological help, medical assistance. And of course, we are talking here about huge financial resources, of course. And these countries were helped by international donors and by countries such as United States. But this is true that rehabilitation and reintegration of returnees demand huge financial resources. I cannot say exact numbers, but I know that this is really huge financial resources, human resources also, because each country is really having difficulties in terms of human resources, for example, psychologists. And recently we were in the conference organized by United States Peace Institute, and one psychologist from Kazakhstan, Bulan, she said that we are all burned out, they are really working hard, and there is really a lack of human resources, psychologists, social workers. So states should be prepared on this aspect also. Thank you.
Thank you. Another question for Annyssa this time. Could you please elaborate further on the issue of the extraterritorial obligation of state parties to the CRC and on the legal suit started against states for violations of their obligation to protect their own children stranded in conflict zones?
Okay. No, I've looked at the question before, so thank you. Well, 2 things. Here, the situation is a bit more complicated in the sense that it is true that the European Court of Human Rights, as well as human rights committees, have said that, first of all, what is clear is that human rights treaties are applicable extraterritorially. So states, when they are committing a violation extraterritorially, they can be held responsible for this violation. Here we are facing a case where actually the children and the other persons are detained by a third authority, if you want, which is the autonomous administration. So it's not the states themselves, which are, for example, as it was the case before in Iraq or in other places, which were detaining themselves the persons. But here, I think what could argue that there is an obligation, at least for states party to these human rights treaties, including the CRC, to ensure the respect of these human rights, to prevent the violations, the core violations, as the prevention of inhuman and degrading treatment, for example. And there we could, I think, indeed adopt a strategy of litigation to uphold these responsibility from states. And I see in the question that they have so far, there has not been any outcome because the litigations are in the process of being lodged. I know for sure that there are some cases that are already being lodged by prominent law firms. And I do believe this is only a part of the solution to put some pressure. As Dr. Abdul Karim Omar said, at some point we need to put all kind of pressures because the states are not doing what they have to do. So strategic litigation is one part of the answer, although it takes time. So in between, I think that as Fight for Humanity is doing, as other organizations are doing, there is a need to provide for humanitarian assistance. And also, I think it's also key to provide for capacity building to ensure at least that, you know, until those states are taking their responsibilities at heart, that the children and the other persons in detention enjoy their basic human rights.
Okay, thank you. Very clear. One last question, and then we will conclude this panel discussion. So this is for Mehmet this time. There are actually two small questions. One is about the teenagers that are detained in these detention centers. So are all 12 to 17 years old children being detained in detention camps, or is there a selection? And you have the answer to that. And maybe they're also asking, somebody asked about how to monitor the violations in the detention centers and how to implement the education curriculum.
I mean, these children coming from the camps, if I understood. I mean, we know that all they're coming from the camps. So separate, and they are not really, some of them have been involved, few of them in some security incidents. Some are pushed, some of them are considered a potential risk. So they represent potential risk. So this is basically, so I can say all these children coming from the camps, indeed, separated the camps. Regarding the monitoring of the rights of the children or situation of the children, so I mean there are not real mechanism in place for monitoring the, but there is access to different, including international organizations, to deal with these aspects. We, as Fight for Humanity, we are allowed to conduct one-by-one assessment. It means that we are allowed to talk to all children to establish a kind of personal file for each children. What are the needs? So therefore, we will. Our work is to work with these children. If needed, we will do the advocacy. So, but I know that other organizations are doing other work, and then maybe more in the line of monitoring the situation. Our work is more assisting to the children. So this is more, I can say. At the same time, I think, yeah, I mean, by the fact that children are there, the rights are, and then on the other hand, we are also working with the security forces from the prison administration to raise awareness among the prison administration staff, and also several hundred guards around this complex. So we are also raising, doing training activities for these security staff involved in detention centers. I think this is also, as they have agreed, this is very good. We think this is another measure to prevent further violations. Regarding the curriculum, we don't have really a formal curriculum. We are discussing with the specialized organizations who are working in other countries, especially in Iraq. We will are going to, after we have conducted this assessment, while we will develop an adapted educational program. At the same time, we will, in between, we will conduct recreational and PSS activities and PSS support to some of the most urgent situations. So therefore, we will see the needs of the children in terms of education. As I said, we are going to provide the basic. We are not pretending to cover the whole education needs of the children. We just want to also, in order that children don't really lose their total hope, there is some lights in the end of the tunnel for them. Still, there is some hope is created in them, and they can enjoy of the basic education. So we are also allowed by the self-administration and SDF to conduct this program with our local partners, thanks also with the support of Medical International. I think this is the first step, but we know that we will assess next year much better the needs, and then we will raise. As Dr. Abdul said, the most important is to have the right place. We need more educate spaces where we can put the children, where we can centers, not to call them, so that the children can really benefit from the education, from the program that you are providing. Without these spaces, whatever you do is the impact will be limited. So the most important to create it, I think the self-administration called many times that they need at least 15 centers in order to divide up these children, take out and to work with properly with these children, which can also allow the links with the families easily. This can, so they can enable a lot of respect of the rights. If we, and the space is so important currently for these children.
Yeah, excellent. So maybe before concluding, I would like to give you like each of the panelists, if you can say a final word and keeping it very short, maybe 20 seconds, 30 seconds maximum, just to conclude the session. I can start maybe with Dr. Karim, Abdul Karim Omar.
Thank you to Fight for Humanity for preparing this meeting. Thank you, Nicolas and the other colleagues. Thank you to the interpreters for bearing the responsibilities of interpretation. And thank you to all the participants in this important symposium. Thank you.
Maybe Cholpon, final word.
سيد شلبون كلمة أخيرة.
Yeah, thank you very much. So as a final word, I would like to mention that I would like to invite states to use this opportunity created by the United Nations. UN has launched the global framework on United Nations support to repatriate and rehabilitate certain nationals from Syria and Iraq. So within this initiative, there is a multi-partner trust fund created, and they are going to support member states by giving even funding and helping with logistics, assist with repatriation of children and adults. So this is a very good opportunity for those countries who are having difficulties in terms of financial resources and also logistics. And thank you for the invitation. And I think the discussion was very rich. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Annyssa, final word.
Well, thank you very much. I would like also to congratulate Fight for Humanity for its great job that it's doing in the region, and also to highlighting the human rights implications of all this discussion, and with regard to armed non-state actor in particular. And I think that, again, I would like to echo what has been said by Dr. Abdul Karim Omar and Cholpon as well, is that there is a clear need now that states are facing their responsibility, and I think there would be an interest in organizing an international conference to highlight their legal obligations, and to make sure that these legal obligations are respected, and that they are accountable for what is going on, because what is going on is super serious, in the sense that if we want to build peace in the region, this is really a core issue to address. So in all that to say that I do hope that we'll find a solution soon. And thank you again.
Thank you very much, Annyssa. So Mehmet, last word.
Thank you very much, really, for all participants who made time this really the last days of the year. I know everybody's very busy, everybody's traveling. COVID is making the travels a lot of complex. So really, sometime I will say, I hope really that our program will end soon. I hope that there is no need that we continue to work in this condition. Really, this is not really where I would like to work. So we feel to be kind of trapped in this, but we had no option to do that. So I hope that really we will stop soon. There is no more need we work in this program.
Thank you very much. So I think we're coming to the end of our discussion today. So thank you to all of you for listening and participating and for the questions that you send. We apologize to those of you who submitted your questions that we didn't manage to answer. We hope you have enjoyed the discussion and that it managed to transmit clearly enough different perspectives. So for your information, the session has been recorded and will be published after the event. So we are also planning to continue organizing webinars in the same series, first-hand views on human rights and peace. And so if you want to stay informed on future events, you can follow us on social media or to subscribe to our newsletter. So thank you very much again to our 4 panelists and also to the 2 interpreters and to you again. Thank you and see you very soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.